Hey everyone, this is Chris and James. You're listening to the How Octane Dads podcast. How Octane Dads is about fast cars, racing, and living that dad life. It's tough out there being a dad and still trying to find time for your hot rod and all your projects. Each week we'll be talking about current events in the automotive and racing world, updates on our projects, and struggles and challenges of being a father in today's day. So kick up your feet and relax for the next little bit. You've earned it.
All right, so I guess if you want to give a quick intro on what High Octane Dads is, and then kind of why we wanted to do this, and then we'll talk about ourselves for a minute.
All right. So, Octane Dads, we want to go over a little bit of, dads that are in the car world, in the automotive scene, kind of what that's like in all aspects of it, kind of like what we're working on, doing it as a hobby, doing it as jobs, or, a way to help with your own, mental stress, what have you, or just, like I said, if it's a job. Oh, I've met personally a ton of, great people through this hobby over the years. Many people, as we'll get to here in a little bit, they're very far from me. Uh, but, we'll go over a lot of car stuff. And as we grow, we'll probably get into a lot of similar topics, mental health, um, family life, dealing with kids, just at home life, your job, kind of a little bit of everything. Friendships everybody's made along the way, be a good time.
Yeah, I know I've got a lot of friendships now that I wouldn't have had if it wasn't for my old turd gen in the garage
Oh yeah, absolutely.
from all the way back in the thirdgen.org days to now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Man,
so we have the same first car year and everything.
yeah,
This was an '86, right?
yeah. It's an '86.
Was it always white?
It's always been white. I'll have to send you some pictures you can put up, but it was white and it had the silver, orange, and red checkerboard all the way around the bottom of it, right above the ground effects.
Peak '80s.
Uh, exactly.
Yeah.
The red and was it carmine red
Carmine red, yep.
or carmine red and silver gray interior seats, just like your car has.
Yep.
It was a LG4, 700R4, 273 car.
Dog.
Oh my God. I I remember in high school, a bunch of us would get in it and ride around, and we'd be like, all right, when the planets are aligned correctly, it'll do a burnout. We'd sit there and try to bounce it up and down to get it spinning, but then sometimes you'd get in and it would just blow the one tire off like it was a top fuel car.
Yep.
And then the next time we had to go out there and like lift it to get it to do it. It was
My
awful.
my best friend since middle school. I got my first car. It was the '86 Trans Am. He gets a '87 Fox Body with a
Oh
302.
yeah.
And when you're first like learning about cars, he knew about cars. His dad was big into hot rods and big. He had a Grabber Maverick that he still has. Amazing car. It's super cool. But my buddy got the Fox Body, and he's like, "Oh, it's got a 302," and I was like, "Ha! I got a 305."
Oh yeah.
It didn't mean nothing.
No, it didn't.
But you couldn't tell
Uh,
me anything in high school. I loved
oh,
that car.
oh yeah. I mean, like I said, mine. I just had my 20th anniversary with the car, so I'm at a point. I really want to make the car nice. I know it makes life more stressful when it's nice, but it's at a point it's sat around a lot, and I really like a nice, quiet interior. Everything that's put together really well. Mine's not anymore. Everything squeaks and rattles and pops.
Yep.
There's so many more noises from the car. I put new headers on it last year, and every now and then the exhaust will buzz against the bottom of the car, and
Mine does that.
I'm like, it's like that meme you see with Ben Affleck where he's just
It's
smoking a
always
cigarette.
something. Well, that's like
That's me.
I just, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna buy something nice. My wife got me some Motion Raceworks gift cards for Christmas, so I'm like, I'm gonna buy the Icon throttle body. I've been wanting one. I'm gonna buy it,
Yeah.
get that, and it's like, oh, there's this other thing I need, and then there's this other thing I need, and I've got another project I'm working on, so it's kind of snowballed, and now it's like I just got to
Oh
get
yeah.
it done, you know. So,
Oh my God. The snowballing. I mean, we've talked about it some before about the whole fuel system debacles, and you're going through it now.
yep.
And mine, it needs it bad. Well, I didn't ever tell you when I first did my swap. Uh, I guess for context, so my car now has a 5.3 LS based engine, T56. And when I did the swap in 2010, I used a plastic 99 to '02 F body Camaro Firebird fuel tank. I used the original fuel pump, the sending unit, everything. Had a pigtail. I wired in with the factory third gen stuff, so it all works. But the sending unit's wrong. The ohms for the third gen was 090. What was it? 9240 or 9270 for the fourth gen. I don't remember right off. Got the sending unit to correct it, but when I built my fuel lines, I did it super cheap. I'd never done them before, and I used aluminum hardline and got it all together, and it works. But if I have to ever pull a tank again, all of it has to be redone because they're going to get mangled and destroyed. And well, the very first time I took it out, I went and filled it up, and it started pouring gas out the top of the fuel tank. Well, I guess the lock ring, the seals messed up. So ever since then, I never put more than $20 a time in it. I'm like, I'll deal with it later. And 14 years later, I still haven't dealt with it.
It's weight reduction, man. You got less fuel in the tank. It's less weight.
Yeah, so I put $20 a time in it, and roll out. If I fill it, it overflows. So, right on the top of the exhaust, perfectly safe.
So when I did my swap, so mine's LQ4, so it's a 6.0. But I was trying to be as cheap and efficient as possible with,
Yep.
and trying to do things, the least complicated way. And so I kept the third gen tank. I got a new sending unit because it was LG4 Quadrajet. Um, Switched the sending unit, did a Walbro 255, and the Corvette fuel filter. I bought the Wix fuel filter and put the compression fittings on them. So all the Earls fittings and stuff to have AN fittings everywhere. And I think it's a -6 feed. Yeah, so eventually that'll have to get probably bigger. But what I did was use the factory hardline again to make my life simpler when I did the swap. But now it's not making my life simpler.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to go beyond just a stock, oh, it's swapped, it's cool, I can drive it, but now I'm trying to push it, to, get
Right.
well into the 11s and ultimately, I want to see like a 1099 or better pass in the car
Yeah.
before I'll be happy with it. So,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, but the factory hard lines on the carbureted cars, it went up the frame rail on the driver's side, it goes over
It's
the
over.
transmission and up the passenger side. Well, when I put the compression fitting on there and had my line to connect to the fuel rail, it was so close to the header. I mean, it was touching depending on if it had moved any. And so
Right.
I did like I bent it a little bit and like so terrible. I went around like to make it go around the shock tower to kind of keep it up and out of the way and hooked it up. And that worked, but I still heat wrapped the hard line, but I've wanted to change it for a while and just do that -6 feed from the Corvette filter soft line all the way up to up the driver's side and just flip the fuel rail around. And so that's what I'm working on now.
Awesome. Yeah, when I did mine, I followed like how the factory fourth gen setups would be. So I had a feed and return went down, my fuel filter, and then I teed into the line after the filter, much like how a factory fourth gen setup is. So then it just bleeds back what you don't need. And then I ran that aluminum line all the way up, and I went to Advance and got those from that self help section, the Dorman quick connects.
Yeah.
And so those are like compression fittings with like brass compression fittings that I got from work onto this aluminum fuel line. And then I bought a factory fuel line from a fourth gen from someone on LS1 Tech and just ran it over to my truck fuel rail that I had to bend up, to
Yep.
get away from the car fuel rail to get around the truck coal packs.
Oh yeah. Yep. And we're back. So what I was saying is that if there was any company that I feel like I could convince there's enough parts on my car, you should probably sponsor it. It's Dorman. I got Dorman shit
Yeah.
everywhere.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
Uh,
So, guys at work used to give me a hard time about, do you ever buy anything new? I'm like, yeah, like, fittings and maybe some hose and things like that at the parts store. But, like, when I did my swap initially, it was a 5.3 turbo 350, and I had, for doing full exhaust on the car, getting it running with a cam, driving, tuned, whatever, I had like $2,200 in it.
so
But that was also the early days.
yeah. Well, so I was very lucky. I did it at a time when there was tons of support for it and aftermarket support and all the mullet militia guys, which we'll eventually talk about that because that's kind of how. I mean, yeah, we were all on thirdgen.org, but like mullet militia is my hat's so faded. Um, but mullet militia is kind of where we all really started chatting a ton, and I mean that led to us meeting at LS Fest last year, like all of us meeting up
Right.
for some of you it was the second time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go that first year. Everybody went, but um, yeah, I mean, Mullet Militia was a big help when I did my swaps. I was fortunate, but things were also more expensive at the time.
Oh, yeah,
But
absolutely.
when I started the project, I thought I was gonna be one of those guys that could say I did it really cheap because the guy that had the 6.0, I had a SIG P228 40 cal. I think it was a 228. So if I'm wrong, that's going to be the controversy that the whole comment section, like we actually get some engagement from it. So you guys go right ahead. But I'm pretty sure it was a 228. And I was like, I'll trade you this and like 300 cash for it was the full engine, top to bottom, manifolds, all the accessories, um, uh, the PCM, everything. The engine looked great, and so he said, "Yeah, let's do it." Well, that was also back in the days when you could list firearms on Facebook Marketplace, and there were tons
Right.
of groups where you would like people would just trade. You'd be like, "Oh, I got this pistol. I want that one." Well, we would you would trade, and so he called me like 3 days later and is like, "Hey, I don't really want this pistol. Like, I really want a Ruger 22, and I found one, and it's like, you know, uh, I think it was like $500 or something." He was like, "So, would you be willing to basically buy this pistol back from me for 500?" And I was like, "Let me think about it." I put the pistol on Facebook. I had a buyer for $800 for the pistol before I went and bought it back for the $500. But I told him, I said, "You can sell this for more. Like I know a guy." And he was like, "Nope." He said, "I want $500. I'm good with that." I was like, "You understand it's worth at least $800." And he was like, "I absolutely understand. I hope that you go get more money for it." I was like, "You are probably one of the coolest dudes I've ever met." Okay. And I sold it on my lunch break the next.
Hell yeah.
So, but
That worked out great.
that was where all the cheapness ended, right? And then everything else after that was but yeah, I think the only other things I bought new were like the water pump because I realized after I got started that I was going drive by cable with an LS6
Right.
intake, and that wasn't going to work with the truck water pump because the snout comes off the top, so it was going to hit on the throttle body.
Okay.
But then I switched to the F body water pump, but I'd already bought all the brackets and stuff for the accessories from ICT Billet.
Okay.
and that's another company that like I can't say enough good things about because I messaged Matt, and he got in touch with ICT, and I was like, here's what happened. I decided to go with an L6 intake, so now everything is spaced differently, and the water pump. I'm going to an F body water pump, but I need truck spacing basically, and they were like, we got you. I forget how much it was, but they had little spacers for the water
Right.
pump to push the water pump out, and then there was one other change, like with the alternator bracket. But I mean, they had stuff
Huh.
to me in like 2 days, and then of course it wasn't one of their standard setups at the time, so I just emailed them. I was like, "Here's what I'm running into. Where does this need to go?" And they were like, "Oh, do it this way," and boom, set it up and done.
Huh.
So
See, when I did mine, I did everything F body, and at that time, everybody was just starting, I guess, to do a lot of LS swaps, and the F body parts were what everybody used.
yep,
And I remember I paid like $400 for a used uh, alternator bracket. Not even an alternator, just a bracket. It was the bracket, the tensioner, and a power steering pump, and the hoses and bracket. It was like $350, $400 I paid for that. And then I bought a used water pump for like $60. And then I bought a new balancer, but it was like off eBay. And I want to say I had like $450, $500 in accessories and just stock stuff. And then I don't know, 5 or 6 years later, kind of local guy had posted up a whole bunch of stuff on market. Actually, with Craigslist. It was before Marketplace really took off,
yep.
and before Craigslist got stupid.
That's how I found my
And
OP4 was Craigslist.
really, I bought my 5.3 off eBay for $375 shipped,
Nice.
and it's been a trooper. But no, it was a few years later. A local guy, he had a whole bunch of stuff he was getting rid of, and I bought a complete F body accessory drive, water pump, alternator, all the brackets, everything for $100. And I don't need it, but I bought it. So I've got a big ass filing cabinet over here. It's just full of parts like that I've got.
Mm-hmm.
And every now and then, I've had friends that have put aftermarket stuff on their cars. I'm like, what do you want for your stock stuff? And I'm that guy. They're like, oh, you can have it. I'm like, excellent.
Yep. Yeah,
I mean,
when I was
I know one of our group chats. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say when I was trying to figure out my intake, because I've got the LS6 intake and I was going to the motion throttle body, I was talking to Kevin and was like, I ultimately I want to go to a fast intake, and he's like, well, eventually mine might get swapped out for something else, and if it does, and I'm like, I'm the first one's like, I'll buy it off you. I have no problem buying
Oh
some
yeah.
secondhand parts. It doesn't.
Oh no.
Because if I can
Absolutely
save
not.
a buck, that's it's more money for stuff with the kids or whatever. Because the car is always secondary. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, like when I did my 6-speed swap, I knew right away that the original GM hydraulics were junk. And at the time, it wasn't long after the Tech master cylinder came out. And I ended up finding one used on a group and bought it used for like $50 cheaper than a new one. And I'm like, hey, it's $50 I saved.
that
But
thing's a sore
man, it's
subject.
been great. What's that?
I said that thing's a sore subject
Why is that?
because I bought one when I was planning to do a
Oh
T56
yeah.
swap, and I lost my ass when I sold that one up. Somebody got a good deal
Yeah.
on one.
Yeah.
But I mean, it sat in my garage for 2 years. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it would have been a fun driver, but my plans for the car kind of changed, and it's like, hey, I actually want to pursue this being a really efficient drag car, and
Right.
at that point, it was like, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the automatic and try to keep it nice and consistent like it is right now. So I just kind
Yeah.
of the only parts I still have left for the T56 swap are the third gen pedals with with the clutch pedal.
Okay. And I've never personally dealt with a car that had the 4th gen pedals or anything else swapped in it, but when I did mine, I did the 3rd gen pedals as well. And I mean, other than the bushings are worn out in mine now, I should have replaced them when I had it all apart. But it's been a solid setup.
Yep.
Been
Yeah,
a real solid setup.
I know that Tick Master Cylinder and everything, they're great. And I was excited to have nice parts for one that because I bought that obviously new but yeah, now I've got a fancy new throttle body from Motion that hopefully will get
Yeah.
on the car sometime this week.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to
Like,
push me to buy a catch can earlier than I
yeah,
anticipated.
man, I need catch cans for all my junk so bad. I
Well, so
mean, so bad.
the thing is, like, then I started looking into it, and it's like, I that's one thing I don't know how to do yet. It's weld. We've talked about that a bunch, and I've got all the equipment, but I'm going to go swap the tank out next week. Um, but with the factory valve covers, like I've got to to use the Motion catch can. If I do one, I want to get theirs. It's you've got to weld in the dash 10
Bum.
bung in there. But I'm really thinking just for a quick and simple, quick and dirty solution, which is, kind of my MO, is they make a thing that screws onto where the oil filler cap goes.
I got you.
And it's a dash 10 fitting on top.
Right.
And there's a guy locally that's got a whole bunch of LS stuff, and he was like, he had a set of valve covers. I still need coils for the 5.3 swap I'm doing on my OBS, and he's got several sets of coils. So I was like, I need a set of those. He had a water pump. I still need a water pump. So I was like, how much? He was like $200 for the coils, the valve covers, water pump, and I think something else. And a set of coils is going to run me $100 used. So
Oh yeah.
I was like, that's not bad. And so I could take the passenger side valve cover from what I get from him, put on the driver's side of my Bird, and get two
Right.
of those oil filler cap to dash 10 bungs and just screw those on there and then get the catch can and at least it'll be ready to roll for a while until I
Oh
get
yeah.
replacement valve covers.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely need to do a setup on all of my vehicles. My Trans Am especially, it is starting to chooch quite a bit of smoke on D-cell these days.
Yeah.
Part of it was when I did my swap. I mean, I bought a used cam kit off of LS1 Tech for $200 shipped for the cam and springs years ago. And when I put it together, I remember doing it right out here in the garage, and I never changed the valve seals. I just slapped it together. The heads had never been off. I swapped the oil pan, still got the stock oil pump, and I mean, I spin it to 7,200 every time I take it out.
Yeah.
And the other week, I took it out and was just screwing around, and I went to do a no lift shift into third, and it went. It didn't go. And I was like, oh no. And I banged the limiter. And then it went in. And then I short shifted in the fourth. And then I let an engine brake. And it was just smoke rolling out. And I'm like, there it went. And then it cleared up and was fine. I'm like, hey, it's probably just chooched a bunch of oil back into the intake. Yeah. So it's probably need valve seals. Definitely need a catch can setup on that thing.
Yeah. When I did mine, I did the tick cam kit, so all that was new. Push rods. Right. I did the trunnion upgrade, and that was an experience.
I don't need that.
Well, so I mean, the thing is, for me,
I need it.
I've not like all of this is new to me. When I did the swap, I did it all with like hand. I didn't even have an impact. I was down there with a ratchet doing everything under the car, and before I started that swap, I'd never pulled the oil pan off of anything, much less. I had done. Like with the 305, I'd done, new valve cover gaskets, replaced the heater core, replaced alternators. I mean, I did my maintenance and stuff myself, so I'm mechanically inclined, but I had just never done anything like that. And so every iteration of me doing anything with this swap has been learning a little bit more. Like right now, so when I did the cam and the Bird, I, did it in the car, pulled the radiator and just took everything off. I didn't replace the oil pump, but I replaced the, pulled everything out, put the dowel rods in there, and then I ran air into it while I changed the valve seals and springs and put the Beehive springs on there. So, and that was, it probably wasn't as critical as I felt it was, but every second that thing was on air, I was like, what if my air compressor dies right now? That's going to suck. And so it was like, I feel like I was on like what was that show 24 where I'm like red wire, blue wire, like you got to hurry up and
Yeah. Oh
get this
yeah.
done. And then I lost a retainer, like it just,
Oh god.
and I didn't know where it went.
You
And
panicked.
dude, I was like, where did this thing? Because I thought I had everything kind of plugged up, but your mind just goes to like, I'm gonna crank this thing over and just get a big boom.
Yep.
And dude, I found it in the collector of the header. I just happened to go,
Oh,
but
I remember that.
I had checked up there, but I finally, I took a magnet and just like ran it up there and it had like wedged itself in there. And so I used an old 6x9 speaker magnet and it
Right.
pulled it up out of there. But
I remember that now. I remember you sending me those pictures.
yeah, dude, I was frantic. 'Cause I was like, I didn't want to have done all this work, you know. But see, now I'm doing the 5.3 in the truck. I bought the same TIG Performance Stage 2 cam kit and everything to go in but it's
Right.
in the 5.3.
It's truck cam.
But yeah, but I've got what's the Street Heat Stage 2, I guess.
Oh yeah.
But like now I've got the heads off the engine, and so because it's a DoD motor, so I'm doing DoD delete
Right.
and all that. So I pulled the heads, replacing the lifters and everything. But all of that again, I'm back in that realm of like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So
Yeah.
I'm learning it as I go, and so my first cam swap was doing it with the motor in the car. First time doing springs, valve seals, any of that stuff. Now I'm doing the DoD delete, and I'm nervous about putting the heads back on, and like, do I get the sequence right, and having to like do the you torque it and then do the degrees, and like you hear horror stories of like,
Yeah.
did I degree that one? I don't remember. Let's check it. Pop.
Yep.
Shit.
Yeah. So, back in 2019, when we did the DoD delete on my '08 Sierra that I had a couple friends help me do the swap because I had just had my back surgery. There was only so much I could do at the time, so I'm like, hey, can you guys help me? I can pay you in food, and I mean, I'm broke right now, but my shit's broke, and I'm having to drive a Camaro all the time, and it's hard for me to get in and out of it. And anyway, so the guy that was helping me at the end put everything back together, he was so terrified about pulling threads out of the block. It was aluminum block. It was a LH6 5.3. And we're sitting there, trying to do that whole torque sequence like you're talking about. And he's like, man, I don't know. This is freaking me out. And so I'm like, screw it. We got on sloppy mechanics. And everybody's like, run them to 60 foot-pounds. And I'm like, fuck it, let's do it. And
Right.
that's what we did. So last year when I did my Caprice, I had it all apart, and I was putting it back together, and I actually put the short block back in the car, with no heads on, obviously short block, and I put the heads back on it in there, and I was going through the torque sequence, and I'm like, all right. So the passenger side, I did it by the book, but I didn't have an angle gauge, so I just marked a place in the engine bay, did all my degrees that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I went back through and set my torque wrench and checked it, and everything was at 60 foot-pounds on that side. So what I did on the driver's side was I did the torque sequence step that they list, and then at the end I did my final at 60. And then we went back through and checked everything. I'm like, screw that, doing that angle bullshit.
And it made the trip to LS Fest. It made passes at LS Fest. You did the cruise too, right? So you had to go and like drive through the town and come back and make a pass.
They ended up just doing an idle in the staging lanes for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I've put, I don't know, about 6,000 miles on the car since then.
I mean, that's your daily for the most part, right? Other than when you drive the Volvo.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I put 6,000 miles on it since the beginning of last August, which isn't a ton. But I mean, at the same time, for a car that, I guess is 4,500 pounds, and it's got a decent sized cam in it, and I beat on it all the time. I mean,
yeah,
it's got air conditioning. I can haul 5 of us in it. It's been great, other than like today we were talking about, I had some wires hanging down. And for reference, this is my 2013 Chevy Caprice that we're talking about now, if y'all haven't heard.
The sleeper.
But yeah.
Until you crank it up.
No, well, yeah, God, the thing's loud.
It is.
And it's not that bad inside the car. Like cruise, I mean, it's loud, you hear it,
Yeah.
but it doesn't drone. And I mean, like I said, like I've driven it the 10 hours LS Fest like that, 10 hours there, 10 hours back. And last year got like 23 miles a gallon with that setup. So, I mean, I'm not upset. Just needs a blower now. But,
Yeah, it never ends, right?
no, but I mean, I really need to. So, like, you're talking like you want to make your car more consistent, race it. And man, when I first started my swap years ago, I had Pocket from TGO build my harness.
He did mine.
And okay, yeah, and so I had him do it. I had a Turbo 350 in the car, and I was like, the ultimate goal is the T56. So when he wired it, I've got I had the plugs and everything there to where I could go ahead and plug it right into a T56, or I had just bare wires where I can wire in a speed sensor for an automatic. So I did the Turbo 350 for a while, and then swapped the T56. And he wired it for air conditioning and everything. All that stuff's there to where you use a 4th-gen compressor and then the 3rd-gen box. And then I just never got to that point. And I drove for a while, and then I'm like, I'm going to turbo this car. And so I picked up it's a Gen 3 5.3. It was an '05 LM7. But, late 03 and a half, '04, they started with the Gen 4 internals. I paid $150 for it. It had a bad lifter. And tore it apart and was just going to pressure wash the block and slap a new cam in it and go. I had bought the Little John's Motorsports Stage 2 turbo cam, the BTR springs, all that mess. I went and pulled everything out of the block, and a cam bearing fell out of the block. I didn't get a chance to look at them. They just were bad off the rip. So the one fell out, so I had some machine work done. All they did was just clean the block up, hone it, whatnot, and then I reassembled it. And then I was going to turbo the car, so I put a heat-only HVAC box in it. We just kind of discussed this a few days ago.
Yep.
And, man, I was going to turbo it, and I wanted to go out the fender and then have my exhaust go out in the fender vent.
Yeah,
The factory
I've
fender
thought
vent.
about that
I was
so many times.
Oh, my God.
Do like
So I was going to cut out some of it to go through the hole. And I was just going to build a plate where it kind of mimicked the factory one, but it went out the fender vent.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, man, I hate to, I don't mind cutting the car up, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want the car to be so to a point where I'm uncomfortable to drive it. I want to be able to hop in the car and bebop around. Some of the old roads that we used to cruise around on as kids. And I'm like, I don't want it to be an all-out race car. I mean,
Yeah.
I have one local track, and I don't think they're opening this year.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, my next closest track is like an hour and a half, 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're in a pretty rural area, and I mean, a lot of back roads to cruise on, things to screw around on. And I'm like, if I had turbo this car with a stick shift, I mean, I was looking to make like 700 to the tire and keep a stick in the car. And I'm like, that's going to be kind of dumb just playing around here. I mean, the car would have no problem getting upset on some of these bumpy ass country roads we've got. Or here I might run over a, pile of horse shit in the road or something. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
But I don't know. And then I finally was like, man, I want to make the car nice. So I'm at a point now where I want to put HVAC back in it, and I plan to keep a T56 in it. Picked up a Explorer 88 rear with 373s. That's what the car has now in the 10 bolt. But man, I really want to do like a 410 or 430.
I know a guy that'll buy that 373 10 bolt when you get done with it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, excellent.
I'll go till it blows up. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, hey, this one has been a trooper. I don't know why it hasn't yet. It's got aluminum drums on it. I'm so terrified of breaking the diff, and then all of a sudden I see a wheel and the axle come out of it, my rearview mirror.
Well,
that's what I'm terrified of.
When I wanted to do some sort of rear end upgrade and I didn't have the money for it. I bought a rear end off of one of the Mullet Militia guys, and it's just the 9 bolt, But it
Okay.
had the 327 gear with disc brakes. I wanted disc brakes on the rear. I wanted to get away from the drum brakes, and so it was just an easy swap because it was out of a third gen. I was able to just drop my rear end out, bolt the new one in, was ready to go, and I knew he had taken care of it, so I drove, you know, 2.5 hours down to Savannah, and um, me and the wife, we made it was like a cannonball run trip. I think we spent the night down there. We had dinner on River Street. We got up the next morning. We went
Yeah.
and picked the rear end up. No, I take that back. We picked it up the night before on the way down. Went and had date night. I had it in the back of a 2006 HHR, those wagons.
Oh,
I had it like pushed up
yes.
in the back between the seats, and then the two of us were, there. And so we went and we spent the night down there, had dinner, and we drove back the next morning. But yeah, so that was, I didn't know at the time or didn't do enough research to realize that like trying to replace the gears in those 9 bolts is not the easy. There's like a
No.
company in Australia or something that will make
Yeah,
gears for the thing.
yeah. Yeah. I had one years ago. I pulled out of a parts card, but it was a disc brake 9 bolt, but it was 308 gears.
Hmm.
And I'm like, man, I'm like, I had 273s in my car. I'm like, it's not really that much of an upgrade.
Yeah.
And then I eventually ended up having at the time I had the stock radiator in the car, a brass radiator. It ended up springing a leak or whatever. And I'm like, damn, I need a radiator. And a buddy of mine had a brand new one. And so he's like, give me that 9 bolt. Awesome, take it. It's just sitting on jack stands in my backyard, my mom's house. So that's where that went. And I think so. The 10 bolt I have in my car now. You talking about Mullet Militia? So Joe, one of the other admins on Mullet Militia, he lives local to me, and I bought a complete car from him. It was an '88 Sport Coupe. That's how I met him. Actually, I met him off Craigslist. I got my harness from him for my swap. I traded him a set of hooker shorty headers and a homemade Y pipe for a third gen that I had pulled off an '82 Trans Am that I had. I traded him for a stock truck harness that I ended up using, sent off, and that's what Pocket chopped up for me. But over the years, me and Joe became good friends, and I ended up buying this '88 Sport Coupe off of him that had a lot of rust in it, and I cut out the floor and used pieces of that to patch the floor of my car. It had a 10 bolt in it with the 373s. It had all black interior that went in my car. I kept the T-tops out of it for spares. I sold a bunch of junk out of it, and then I had a guy come down and buy the shell from me and the title just for the title, basically. I'm like, well, whatever. He was basically scrapping it, but I mean, he had a car that was super nice, and he may or may not have been doing some things you're not supposed to do with the title and VINs. I don't know.
We won't
I didn't have any with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
I don't
saw
know
it
who the
with
guy
him.
was.
Yeah.
I just sold him a car for parts and junk. So, but I mean, yeah. And like I said, Joe, I mean, he only lives 35, 40 minutes from me. Yeah, I could probably count on one hand, the times that there's ever been money exchange between us. I think that was one time. But then, hell, I gave him my original 273 rear, and he gave me some racing seats, and then they weren't quite right for what I wanted, and I traded them to another guy for some SS seats, and oh yeah, do a lot of bartering around here.
Yeah, that's the way I prefer to do it if I can. And, I mean, that's like with the Mullet Militia crew. I mean, there's so many good people. That rear end was Tony Sanchez. He had that really
Oh yeah,
nice orange Camaro. I assume he still got it. But I remember seeing that car. I went to the 10th F Body gathering in Atlanta. That was the first time I met Tony in person. And of course, Mullet Militia was nowhere near a thing in 2010, or excuse me, 2006. I literally graduated high school. My graduation gift was getting my car painted. So like
oh
everybody chipped in to have my car painted for me for graduation. So I got the car back from paint, practically still wet. Um, Picked it up. We I graduated, and 2 days later, because graduation was like on a Thursday, I guess it was the next day. We got up and drove to the Marriott in Atlanta, and were there for the F Body gathering for the weekend. We left early Sunday morning. I was like, I met a lot of great people there, but I was like, I'm not
oh
gonna
yeah,
win any awards. This car is it's a stock car. The only thing that I literally had a chrome air breather on it and an exhaust like a Flowmaster welded in, and so we packed up early and left out on Sunday and had to be and we were going to the beach the next like 2 days later, so we had to get on home and but we had a blast. Like the F Body Gathering, I hate that show ended. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
But met Tony there, super nice guy. There were so many great people, and one of them emailed me a couple days later and was like, "What's your mailing address so I can send you your award?" And I was like, "What? There's no
Yeah.
way my car won." They're like, "You won best in class."
Awesome.
I was like, "There's no fucking way." Like I think pretty
Yeah.
sure I was leaking oil when we got there, like the rear main or something. Like they didn't even look at my car if I want. Now I did have the carmine red and silver seats with the Trans Am birds and the headrest, and I like it.
Right.
50 feet, it looked great. But I was like, "There's no way I want." Well, come to find out, in the like stock class, they broke it up by year, and like
Okay.
86, 87 was its own category. 86, 87 stock. I was the only car in the class.
Hell yeah.
But I still got that plaque hanging in the garage.
That's awesome.
There's not a lot of pictures from that, and that's we were talking about that earlier. Like, I know I've seen pictures of you with your car when you were 16 or whatever, and had it, and I've got a few pictures of my car from the car domain days when I had a car domain page. It's like Facebook
Yeah.
for your car. But there's just not a lot of pictures of me or the car from back then. And every now and again, I'll go to the F Body Gathering page and you'll see people post pictures and stuff. And because there was at one point we parked my car's the red with the silver ground effects. The blue with the silver ground effects was another thirdgen.org member. And then there was a guy there with a white turbocharged GTA. And so we parked them red, white, and blue side by side and had the flags all behind them. And we took a bunch of pictures. Somebody took a bunch of pictures. Never got
Yeah.
it.
Oh, there's actually like the one that I've posted a bunch over the years. There's like one picture of me in my car standing next to it, and it was like a month after I got it. And I remember my uncle or somebody took that with. I think he took it with a digital camera, but then he had to email it to me later because that was before a whole. I mean, it was. It wasn't like the whole smartphone thing like we have now. And then the camera phones you did have were like, a half a pixel. So,
Yep.
But I mean, and then there's a couple pictures after a few years later when digital cameras really started becoming a thing when I was in my early 20s and I started messing with the car, swapping engines and transmissions in my mom's driveway. And like my mom, I have one where I had the car running where I had put a different small block in it. My mom recorded, you hear her being like, "How do you turn this thing off?" And I think about it, like sometimes I'm like, man, I should edit all that out. And then now I'm like, man, I'm glad I never did because it's just kind of some stuff that you'll never get to hear or see again like that.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the pilot episode of the High Octane Dads podcast. We've already started recording on episodes 2 and 3, and this episode was really just a great conversation about how we met and our passion for our cars and our projects. In the future, you can expect to see more specific topics, automotive and racing news, questions from our Facebook group, and even some special guests. So if you haven't already, go check out our Facebook page, give it a follow, and of course, like and subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. We look forward to doing a lot more of these and hanging out with you guys in the Facebook group.